Hey, David Brewster here with an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Pete Townshend. And of course, we're going to be talking about The Who. And The Who formed in London, England in 1964 and went on to become one of the most popular rock bands of all time. They've sold over 100 million albums worldwide. I can't really have a series on my channel called Chordplay without talking about Pete Townshend because he's historically known as a chord wizard, definitely. And his knowledge and ability, with inversions and partial chords and slash chords, these droned open strings. There's a lot of things happening, rhythm-wise and chord-wise in Pete's guitar style. So he's not really known as a shredding, rock lead guitarist, even though he has played lead and, in fills and stuff in his songs. Pete's focus has always been chords and melody and groove, more than just flashy, licks. And he definitely is a very important guitar pioneer. Pioneered, the windmill, of course, flashy stage antics, jumping around on stage, lots of stage presence, having full stacks like a wall of amps on stage, using feedback, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, all kinds of stuff. And just a heads up, but there's a lot of acoustic in this lesson. I did open it with, an electric song, but there's a lot of acoustic in Pete's music, in his catalog of music. And it does seem like when he plays electric guitar, he kind of relies more on just power chords and basic, major and minor chords. But then when he grabs an acoustic, that's when he really comes to life. And he has all these really interesting chord voicings and mutations and extensions. And, we're going to definitely kind of hit, a little bit of electric. There's a lot of acoustic, but you can definitely bring the acoustic ideas over to electric guitar. And for those of you that aren't really that big on acoustic guitar, let me tell you, there's nothing better for your fret hand, strength. Like if your fret hand's feeling kind of wimpy or weak or something, I'll grab an acoustic guitar and play for a couple days, just acoustic. And then when I go back to electric guitar, it feels like I've had a workout. My hand is strong. And it makes the electric guitar seem easy, compared to the challenge of acoustic guitar. With the opening, that was I Can't Explain from My Generation. And that's definitely, the song that put The Who on the map. That was their first big hit. And there's some cover versions of this song, like the Scorpions, I think did it like in the late 80s or something like that. But I Can't Explain, it's pretty basic, but there are some little chord, kind of maneuvers and little tricks, that Pete's throwing in here. Something like this. It's pretty basic, and it's basically, E major to D major, and then you'll see this. So he's doing, and that is basically the middle four strings of an A major bar chord. But Pete's not really playing the full bar chord. He's letting the bass, John Entwistle hit the root note. So he's really just grabbing the middle four, strings. And that's a very tight, chord voicing, especially if you have a little bit of grit or overdrive on your amp. It's not as cloudy or kind of funky as a full bar chord. You're really just kind of grabbing that middle ground right there. And it's very cut and dry. It's very, very staccato, I guess, the way it's played right there. And you can hear, one strum on the E, two on the D, and then one on the A, and then you start the cycle. Return to that E again. You're going to bounce through that a few times. And then the last time he really just bounces from E to D, and then he does a B major, just like the A, but we're up, a whole step higher. And there's B. And then when the chorus comes, you hear E major, but he's not really playing the full E major, cowboy chord. Once again, he's really just playing the middle four strings. So you can use your thumb to kind of, mute that low E. And you can play the low E in if you want to. But it doesn't really sound like he's playing the full chord. I think he's just playing partial chords. And then C sharp minor. back to that A, and then back to the B. So that's like an A over E and a B over F sharp, technically. So that chorus part. And then go back to the head. As you can see, I've switched over to an acoustic guitar, and the next example's Dreaming from the Waist, and this is from the Who by the Numbers album, which I think that's my favorite Who album. And it's something like this. This is a great example of Pete's kind of fondness for pedal tones, and he loves this kind of oblique motion in chords where he has like the sustained pedal tone, and you're going to see that in a couple other examples in this lesson. But you can see right here we're basically starting with A major, and he strums that. It's basically like that 70s kind of inversion up there, and he's strumming that A, and then he goes to E over A, but then he just starts pedaling that open A string like this. There's that E over A right there. And then just start, you know, pedaling that open A string. And then the chord's going to move down to this, and that's basically D sus2 over A. And then you're going to hear it move to this, and that's D minor add 9 over A. So you're hearing this. And I love that D minor add 9 over A. You know, it sounds cool in there. Hear D sus2 go to D major right there. It's kind of tight, you know, along the 7th fret. And then basically extend that chord and grab that A up on the high E string right there. So that's definitely a cluster of, you know, fret hand fingers. But don't be afraid to, you know, tackle that chord. And then you hear it move down to this F major 7. And then you hear basically this D added right there. That's like a, you know, a D minor over A, I guess. So F major 7 to D minor over A. And then one of, you know, Townshend's favorite chords, that E sus4 to E major. You know, something like that. Cool guitar part though, I like those chords. Up next is the very famous Behind Blue Eyes from the Who's Next, and I've had lots of students over the years ask for this song. And it's a good chord workout, but it's a great picking workout, you know, for your picking hand because you're arpeggiating everything. Something like this. And who did the cover of this? Was that Limp Bizkit? I can't remember. But anyway, something like this. It starts off once again with Pete's famous, you know, E sus4, and he's picking through it in like this really specific pattern. So E sus4 is here, and he's doing this really slowly. Something like that. Tricky, you know, definitely something you need to lock in with that picking hand to make sure you're picking exactly the right pattern. And then you're going to move to E minor. Just kind of pick major to D major, and then it's D sus4 to D major, and then you're going to move to the C add 9, and then A sus2, and it's picked in a very specific way. And then you just loop that, you know, E minor again. Guitar part, and there's a reason that song is still popular today, because those chords and that progression and the song itself, the lyrics, everything, it's timeless, you know, it's classic. The next example is from the song Imagine a Man, and this is also from Who by the Numbers, and this is really interesting. So we're obviously on acoustic guitar, and we're tuned down 1.5 steps, and we're also in drop D. So this is going to sound like drop B, but you have to think of the time period. This is a really early, you know, detuned rock song. I mean, even though it's on acoustic guitar, it's way down there, you know, way down there. So it's something like this. So we're basically playing this D major chord and kind of picking through it, but in this tuning it's going to sound like B major. But then the picking pattern there, and then we're moving up to this, and that's basically D7 with D7 sus2. So we're moving from here, and then you're doing a G over D right there. It's G minor over D. And then grab that low E that's tuned down, go back to that D, and then you're going to basically move up to this, and that's basically D7. And then go back to that D, or G over D. And then you have this little guy, so that's like a D sus2 flat 6. But I really like that chord progression, it's unusual. It's really unusual, especially with the tuning, and it's acoustic guitar, so it's a little buzzy, and I didn't really readjust anything on my guitar. So watch the tuning, you know, if you start tuning down like that. And I do have 12s on my acoustic, so it kind of takes, you know, that lower tuning, but it is still a little buzzy, especially right there on the B string. You know, whatever. Here's another electric example, and this is the song Tattoo from the Who Sell Out. And there's this interesting, you know, sequence of chords, and there's also this kind of rotary or tremolo effect, and something like this. One more time. Hear that rotary effect. I'm trying to emulate, you know, the effect that he was using, but it basically starts with this, and that's going to be a B flat sharp 11, and it has this kind of interesting, kind of herky-jerky, you know, rhythm, you know, where it kind of speeds up and then slows down and speeds up and slows down. So move from that B flat sharp 11 to this, and that's going to be an A minor flat 6. You know, really interesting. And then this is going to be a C add 9 over G. And then move that shape down a whole step, and you're playing a B flat sus2 sharp 11 over F. So like I said, Pete's a wizard. You know, these really unusual chords. I like that, that chord progression. It's really weird and just different. You don't really hear that sequence of chords very often. The last example is the very famous Pinball Wizard from Tommy, and the beginning, like the intro, has this buffet of all these different chords, and Pete's just twisting and mutating this cycle of chords like this. Okay, so let's break these chords down. So it starts with this, and that's basically B minor over F sharp. And you'll hear him kind of pedaling, that root note, that F sharp. And then open up that high E string, and that's basically a B minor add 11 over F sharp. So B minor over F sharp, B minor add 11 over F sharp. And then basically lower this D note down to that C sharp. And now you're playing a B sus4 add 9. That's really, kind of different. And then you're going to basically hear it go to F sharp 7 right there. And then you hear that that A sharp basically move back to A natural, and then you have F sharp minor 7. And then after that, you're doing this. And it's basically E minor add 9 over F sharp. Think of our old buddy, E minor add 9, but you're just playing the top part of it. And then you hear it move up to this G6, and then you hear it go back down to that F sharp, and Pete's using his thumb, on that F sharp root note right there. And that's right before he goes into his giant, thumb-based, B sus4, B major, and then just starts moving down, the fretboard there. There's a bunch of chords, obviously in the song. It's a strummer's, workout. But the part we were really looking at in the beginning there is the kind of the focus for this example. Just this kind of slow progression and mutation and twist of all those chords. I love stuff like that. Really cool melody within the chord progression. That's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Pete Townshend. Definitely a very important, influential, he paved the way for everybody. So almost everything that you heard, in the 70s and the 80s and that, continued in rock, definitely, Pete helped light that torch, right alongside people like Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page and Hendrix, of course, George Harrison from the Beatles. There's a whole bunch of important, characters. But definitely Pete Townshend's influence, he influenced, up-and-coming guitarists and beginners, but he also directly influenced, his peers, other players were like, whoa, Pete's got all these chords, and definitely, very important guitarist. So anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.